This is Jarrod Horak, and this is my latest handicapping video. And in this video, I'm going to analyze the Grade 1 Awesome Again Stakes at Santa Anita Park for Saturday, September 30th. And this is a win and you're in race for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Now, speaking of the Breeders' Cup, if you head on over to todaysracingdigest.com and go on over to their news section, you're going to find a lot of Breeders' Cup articles that I'm going to be posting from now all the way through the Breeders' Cup. I've already posted 2, and I'm going to be posting at least 1 article per day for the next 5 weeks as we get closer to the 2023 Breeders' Cup. The first article I posted this week, top 5 horses to watch for the Breeders' Cup, and then I posted an article earlier today. I'm going through my angles for each race series, and for those Breeders' Cup race angles, I'm looking at some trainers that have had success and jockeys, and some winning running styles, and all kinds of angles that could make these races easier to decipher. So I did the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, where I went through the angles in that race, and I posted that earlier today. And I'm going to go through all 14 Breeders' Cup races, and I'm going to look at winning angles for those races. So check all of those articles out at todaysracingdigest.com, the angles articles, and all kinds of other stuff that I have in store as well. So keep going over to todaysracingdigest.com as we get closer to the 2023 Breeders' Cup. Now we're going to do the analysis of this video, and it's going to be the 8th race at Santa Anita Park, Saturday, September 30th, 2023. Grade 1, $300,000 Awesome Again Stakes for 3-year-olds and up, traveling 1 1/8 on the main track. Scheduled post time 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and the past performances in this video are provided by todaysracingdigest.com. And number 1 in this race is Senor Buscador, and he likes to get involved late. But if I'm looking at the overall scenario of this race, I'm not sure that we're going to have enough pace to flatter his late run. But we'll have to see how that plays out. He's run once at Santa Anita Park, the Grade 1 Gold Cup earlier this year. He was no threat that day. And then the race that really gives him a look in this race is his victory in the Grade 2 San Diego at Del Mar at 1 1/16 on July 29th. He was 9th and last, 11 lengths back, and he passed the whole field, and he won by 1 1/4 lengths at 13-to-1 odds. And Slow Down Andy finished second that day, and he's in this race as well. In his last start in the Grade 1 Pacific Classic at Del Mar at 1 1/4 on September 2nd, again, this was a 10-horse field this time, and he was last 11 lengths back, just like he was 11 lengths back in the San Diego. But he wasn't able to make up enough ground in the Pacific Classic, and he ended up finishing 4th, beating 2.5 lengths, a length behind to Slow Down Andy. So Senor Buscador, 3rd start after a layoff. He's going to need some pace help in here, and his winning rider, Giovanni Franco, stays aboard. Again, he's 0 for 1 at Santa Anita, and 0 for 2 with no top 3 finishes at 1 1/8. Defunded is number 2. He has plenty of class, the back class to win a race like this, and he does good work at this course and distance. 9 starts at Santa Anita, 5 wins, 2 seconds, and a third. At this distance, 6 starts with 3 wins and 2 seconds. So he usually runs his race at this course and distance. He's banked more than $1.6 million in his 7 for 19 career. And he's one he's had some stake success, like especially in this race last year. The Grade 1 Awesome Again, he wired the field at 5-to-1 odds, defeating his stablemate Country Grammar and Slow Down Andy. His next start after that, the Grade 3 Native Diver, and he practically went all the way that day as well, winning by more than 4 lengths. Now, Edwin Maldonado was aboard for the Awesome Again and the Native Diver, but he hasn't ridden since then, but he does get back aboard in this race. In the Pegasus World Cup, he was 2nd. He was a close 3rd in the Big Cap. He won the Californian, the Grade 2 at Santa Anita, and the Gold Cup at 1 1/4, also at Santa Anita. And then in the San Diego, he was the favorite, the beaten favorite there. And then in the Pacific Classic last time, he came up empty, 6th, beaten 10 lengths. He was racing wide in his last couple of starts. If you look at his overall Del Mar record, he's inconsistent there. He was in the San Diego in 2022 in the Pat O'Brien. He didn't run well. He did win the Native Diver there, but then he disappointed in this year's San Diego and Pacific Classic. So Defunded has a good bullet workout for this. September 24th, 4 furlongs and 47 flat, best of 100. He should be up on the pace. He's a bounce-back candidate. The next one is Slow Down Andy, and he looks like a solid early pressing contender in this race. Very consistent horse. 13 starts, 4 wins, 4 seconds, 3 thirds. He's banked more than $1 million. He's started twice at Santa Anita with a win and a second, and 4 times at this distance, a win, a second, and a third. Now, as a 3-year-old, he won the mile and an eighth Grade 3 Sunland Derby, and then the Los Al Derby, he was second. The Real Good Deal Stakes against Cowbred Company, he was second, and then he won the Grade 2 Delmar Derby, a mile and an eighth on the turf. These races were all last year, and then the Awesome Again, last year's edition. He was third behind Defunded and Country Grammar, and he was a clear third that day. And the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, another good effort for this horse. He was 17-1. Cody's Wish and Cyberknife were 1-2. Slow Down Andy was a clear third. He started his season this year in the Grade 1 Met Mile. He was sixth, beaten 10 lengths after battling on the pace. The Grade 2 San Diego from the inside post. He's had a good stalking trip, and he was second. Couldn't go with Senor Buscador late, but he held off the rest. And then the Grade 1 Pacific Classic, he stalked the pace. He came after Arabian Night and actually poked his head in front, but that 1.25 mile distance tripped him up. He couldn't go with Arabian Night and Go Rocket Ride in the late going, but he did hold third. So he's one with a good inner post, and he should be able to sit a good tactical trip, and he should, with his consistency, run a quality race here. Skinner is next, and he's one that's a 3-year-old that is just 1 for 8 lifetime with a second and 3/3. So he's still eligible for an entry-level allowance race. I've always liked this son of Curlin. I'm just not sure that this is the time where he's going to break through with a stakes win. He's had 4 starts at Santa Anita with a win in 2 seconds and 2 starts at the distance with a second and a third. He broke his maiden impressively earlier this year at Santa Anita Park in a 1-mile race on February 12th. Then he was third in the San Felipe, a close third in the Santa Anita Derby. They were going to run him in the Kentucky Derby. He went to Churchill. He was training well. It looked like he could run a good race, especially when you see that you look back and see that there was a pace collapse there, and he was a closer. But he got sick and had to scratch out of that race. And then he entered the Affirmed Stakes, but they didn't run him there. John Sheriffs wasn't happy with his training. Go Rocket Ride ended up winning that race. Then he finally did return in the Los Al Derby, but Reincarnate was able to get out there and control the pace, and Skinner could not catch him, and he was second best. And then Prince Abu Dhabi, the show finisher, was the next out winner. And then in his last start, the Grade 1 Pacific Classic, he was out in post 10 in a 10-horse field. That race didn't set up for closers. Arabian Night, Go Rocket Ride, and Slow Down Andy were all forwardly placed. They stayed up there throughout, and Skinner ended up working his way up to 4th in the stretch, but then losing some ground late and finishing 5th. So he's reconnecting with Mike Smith, who was aboard for that runner-up finish in the Los Al Derby, and he's kind of at the mercy of the pace. He needs some pace help. Bye Bye Bobby with Drayden Van Dyke aboard is next for trainer Todd Fincher. This is a son of Quality Road, 15 starts, 5 wins, 4 seconds, and 2/3. In the 7-furlong Pat O'Brien Stakes, he cut way back in distance last time. Prior to that, he was in the Grade 3 Cougar the Second Stakes at 1.5 miles at Del Mar, and he was all over the pace, and he finished 3rd. Then they cut him all the way back to 7 furlongs in the Pat O'Brien, and he came flying late to finish 2nd, beaten 3/4 of a length. So now he's going to stretch back out. He's going from 1.5 miles to 7 furlongs to now 1.1 miles in his 3rd start after a layoff. 2 starts at this distance with a win and a second. He's got some positional speeds. I think he'll probably end up stalking the pace. Going to need to pick up his game a bit. Celestial Moon is next for trainer Mark Glatt. This is a son of Malibu Moon. 3 for 7 lifetime with the second. He's never run at Santa Anita, and 1 start at this 1.1 miles distance, and he was unplaced. He moved from the Bill Mott barn to the Mark Glatt barn last time, and he was able to win a 1-mile optional claiming race at Del Mar on September 3rd, stalking the pace and pulling clear and edging away, adding blinkers for the first time. So now he's going to get a class test. He's never been in a stakes race. He looked good, and that was a relatively fast race last time. And Antonio Frisu gets aboard, and he has good stats with trainer Mark Glatt, but he gets a class test in here. We'll see where he fits from a distance and a class standpoint. But I can see him at least stalking the pace in here and working out a decent trip. National Treasure for trainer Bob Baffert. Juan Hernandez will ride, and he's adding blinkers here. And he's gone through this song and dance before. Had blinkers in his debut, and he wired the field. Took blinkers off second time out in the American Pharoah, and he finished 2nd. Put blinkers back on in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and he was 3rd. Took blinkers off in the Sham Stakes, he was 3rd. And the Santa Anita Derby, he was 4th. And then they put blinkers back on, and he stole the Preakness Stakes when there was absolutely no pace, 48-4, 113 and change, and he was able to hold on and defeat Blazing Sevens. And then he also had blinkers in the Belmont Stakes, but that race was too far for him, and he ended up finishing 6th after setting the pace. And then in the Travers, they took blinkers off, And you just knew, looking at his form, when they took blinkers off, he probably wasn't going to be able to make the lead, and he didn't. Because if you look at all of his races in which he was able to get to the front, he had blinkers in all of those starts. So now putting blinkers back on, I think the plan is to try to get him out there and maybe try to attempt a theft like he did in the Preakness. He's facing some good horses in here. We'll see where he stacks up. I don't know that he's quite good enough to defeat a field like this. Piroli is next. Umberto Rispoli will ride for trainer Michael McCarthy. 15 starts, 3 wins, 4 seconds and 2/3. He's had 8 starts to Santa Anita, 2 wins, 3 seconds and a third, and he's never run at this mile and an eighth distance. This is his 3rd start after a layoff, and his big effort this year in the stakes ranks was in the Grade 1 Gold Cup. Defunded won that one, and Piroli chased him at 28-1, and he finished second, beaten a length, and he was well clear of the rest. But his last 2 starts at Del Mar optional claiming race, he was a disappointing 4th as the beaten favorite. Pacific Classic 7th, beaten 10 lengths at 54-1. So now 3rd start after a layoff. I can see him stalking the pace under his new rider Rispoli, but I think he's probably a bit up against it. Stilleto Boy has run some races that could threaten this group. He just seems to be off his game right now. 7 starts at Santa Anita, 2 wins, 2 seconds, and 2/3. He's got 1 win, 1 second, and 3 third place finishes at this distance. And in the Pacific Classic last time, he had an awkward start. He eased, he walked off. So you can just kind of draw a line through that one. The Stephen Foster before that, he chased the pace. He was 6th. The Oaklawn handicap, he was a close 3rd. He won the Grade 1 Santa Anita handicap. Kent DeSorma gave him a great stalking ride that day, and he defeated Proxy and Defunded. That's the kind of race he's going to need to run here. He's run well in races like the Pegasus World Cup, the San Antonio, the San Diego from last year, and he won the Grade 2 Californian in 2022. So he has enough class and at least early pressing speed. Interesting to see what kind of trip he's going to work out from the outside post. I think Kent D is probably going to want to get him stalking while out in the clear. So looking at this race, it's an interesting race. We have like a 3-year-old, like National Treasure. Maybe Skinner's a little more interesting, but I don't know that he can win this race. I think this one comes down to really how the pace is going to play out, because it doesn't look like there's a bundle of pace in here. I can definitely see National Treasure putting blinkers back on, trying to get out there and be part of the pace. Defunded, I think that they're going to want him to be stalking the pace in this spot, and then Slow Down Andy should work out a good stalking trip as well. Maybe Bye Bye Bobby stalking the pace, but there's just not a lot of front end speed. So I'm going to predict that National Treasure will end up setting the pace. And then you're going to see Defunded and Slow Down Andy chasing that pace. So looking at the recent Today's Racing Digest pace and speed ratings from the last few starts, Slow Down Andy has the best recent numbers. He's got decent form. I think maybe this is the race where he's going to break through and win his first stakes race since the Grade 2 Del Mar Derby. He's been knocking on the door. He ran a quality race in the San Diego. He ran a good race in the Pacific Classic, a little bit too far for him. I really hope that he'll run a decent race in here, but then they don't go for the Classic, because I think 1.25 miles and that kind of company is probably too much for him. But I do think that this 1.125 miles is within his range, and especially how this race might play out, where there's not a ton of pace, and he might be able to track that pace, get past the horse like National Treasure, get the first run, and then hold off some of the other runners. So Slow Down Andy is going to be my top choice in the Grade 1 Awesome Again. And I really hope they go for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile for this one again. He's one that I think he was 3rd in that race last year. That race could be right in his wheelhouse. And let's see him run a quality race here. I expect that he's going to be somewhere in the top 3 if he maintains form, and he certainly could get the job done. And then the horse that I think can rebound and run a better race is Defunded. I do think that he likes this course in distance, and he's better than he's been showing. And Maldonado rode him well in 2 stakes wins last year. So Defunded could definitely be one that could run a much better race than he's shown in his recent Del Mar form. So that will wrap up my look at the Grade 1 Awesome Again. This Breeders' Cup win you're in for the Breeders' Cup Classic. And again, go over to todaysracingdigest.com to check out all of my Breeders' Cup 2023 handicapping articles. And until I see you next time, good luck at the races.